New York Governor Kathy Hochul wins the right to continue her quarantine insanity, and we've got some interesting things happening around the world in terms of quarantine necessities. We've got now an order from the New York Court of Appeals saying that she can continue what she was already doing, and the story tells us that she in fact wins. She was on the losing end of this legal battle for quite some time, but a decision that has just come out over the New York Court of Appeals says that the quarantine regulations that were prohibited has been overturned. After oral arguments ended last September, the New York Supreme Court ruled that the state's commissioner of health is allowed to issue quarantine orders to control the disease. This is because, according to the documents, the plaintiffs here lack standing. The decision comes after a lawsuit was filed against Hochul and the New York State Department of Health. The senator from the state, George Borrello, sued the government. He said this regulation impedes individual liberty and it oversteps the separation of powers. You can't quarantine people. Well, Letitia James appealed it and they won. This is what the order says. It says here from the Appellate Division, 4th Judicial Department, Supreme Court of the State of New York, in the matter of Greg Borrello, state senator, against Kathy Hochul, the governor, suing them over quarantine regulations. And this is allowing her to continue what she was doing previously. This is on appeal from a lower level court. They said that this law, the lower level court said that the New York law, the quarantine law that Kathy Hochul placed, they found it to be null, void, unenforceable. They said they were permanently enjoined the government from enforcing it. So here, the appellate court in New York says, sorry, it is hereby ordered that the judgment that's appealed from is reversed, saying that she can do this. They give us some background. They say at the outset of the pandemic, the governor of New York declared a state disaster emergency and authorized the commissioner to promulgate emergency regulations. And they did that. Cuomo. Now, DOH responded, and they then regularly readopted a series of other emergency regulations, and they replaced the other ones. And one of those was isolation and quarantine procedures aimed at controlling the spread of disease. DOH eventually expressed its intent to adopt that rule permanently. The COVID powers are now ours. Now, 3 members of the New York State Legislature and an advocacy organization commenced this lawsuit. They said that the law was violation of the state constitution and separation of powers, and that the regulation is invalid. They wanted an injunction saying the government cannot do this. Now, the Supreme Court, the lower level court, without addressing whether they had standing to even bring these claims, they said that they did violate the separation of powers doctrine by exceeding the scope of the power. The court adjudged that executive order, that law, to be null and void and said, you can't do that. No isolation, no quarantine nonsense here. Now the respondents appeal the government and they reverse, and they do it. Why? Standing. There's no standing. They say whether a person seeks relief, we have to consider whether it's even justiciable, whether you can even come into our courtroom. And they give us a bunch of law here. Addressing the first contention that they lack standing, they note that here, in the case before us, they're explicitly saying that they don't have legislature standing, and they conclude that there is no injury in fact requirement that has been met. The petitioners, they sued in their official capacity, and they specifically alleged in their claim that there was an alleged harm. There's just an alleged harm, right? There's a separation of powers problem. The separation of powers problem causes an alleged harm. What is that harm? Unlike circumstances in other cases where there is a concrete personal injury arising from this, here, to the extent that they assert that there has been harm, they say, what's the harm? Your harm is participating in the policy-making process? They're like, well, we as congresspeople, we as local congresspeople, we're harmed by this ridiculous rule. We have to go create laws, and our people are mad at us. And they said, well, that's not harm enough. Sorry, that grievance is not harm enough. So you don't have standing to bring this. Also, your claims don't fall within the zone of interests. And so we agree that the petitioner and the organizations lack standing. Nobody's got standing to bring this claim. And they say, we know that we're supposed to interpret the standing rules narrowly so that you can bring claims. But here, inasmuch as the legislature retains its power, saying you guys can just go fix this, just go pass a new law or assert a more concrete and particularized harm. Right now, this is not a case to deny these government actors the right to do these actions. So it is denied. So Kathy Hochul continues to gobble up power in New York, and she's not done. She's also got some other new initiatives that she's launching, including censoring misinformation. So if you don't like that ruling, you don't like her isolation and quarantine rules, well, it's just too bad. They're going to just censor you and silence you from complaining about it.
Also, we're very focused on the data we're collecting from surveillance efforts, what's being said on social media platforms. And we have launched an effort to be able able to counter some of the negativity and reach out to people when we see hate speech being spoken about on online platforms. Our social media analysis unit has ramped up its monitoring of sites to catch incitement to violence, direct threats to others. And all this is in response to our desire, our strong commitment to ensure that not only do New Yorkers be safe, but they also feel safe. Because personal security is about everything for them. As I said, no one walking down the street or in a subway should feel they have to hide.
Are they being attacked by misinformation on the subways in New York? Like they're walking around and like a Facebook post jumps out from behind a trash can? Yeah. And they're going to censor that and people are going to walk freely? Like, wow, this is much safer. Thank you. There's not misinformation on YouTube.
Any indications of what their religious beliefs are. We expect to see people celebrating their lives, walking about freely, and that is no longer the case because people are living in fear.
Because of social media.
They have a right to do whatever they want here in the state of New York.
Apparently. Yeah, they have a right to do whatever they want. They don't even have to be citizens and they can do whatever. So here's another one from Kathy saying they're also going after the schools and they're going to be getting those students in line.
Today I'm directing the Director of Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services to develop media literacy tools for K through 12 in our public schools. This will teach students and even teachers to help understand how to spot conspiracy theories and misinformation, disinformation, and online hate. Start talking about what we're seeing out there. Give the teachers the tools they need to help these conversations in school.
To indoctrinate your kids into little
communists. By teaching younger New Yorkers about how to discern between digital fact and digital fiction, we can better inoculate them from hatred and the spread of it.
And from becoming Republicans.
And help prepare them for a very fast-moving and often confusing world.
Yeah, and don't trust right-wingers is what they're trying to teach them. So, all right, that's what's happening in New York. Wild state. It's turning into just a blue, totalitarian, dystopian society, but that's all right. I don't live there. So, all right, my friends, that is it on Hochul. More quarantine powers coming into play and right on time for the 2024 election, just like last season when we had Trump was doing very well in 2019. They had to start really kind of ramping things up at the end of 2019, early 2020. We're kind of in that same moment. 2023, we'll see if they ramp up things in 2024. Of course, we'll be here to continue to cover it, my friends. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for subscribing as we continue to cover this and more, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you on the next one.